be quiet, please. Okay. Podcast number 1. I actually need that to line up the
Oh,
audio.
do you? Yeah.
Okay.
Let's rock and roll.
We're ready. Okay, am I interviewing you?
Yes.
Okay. Totally prepared. Okay. So let's start this podcast, with a little introduction just into what this is, and then we'll get into who you are. So I came to you a long time ago. Doesn't matter how long, at least a year.
You came to me 31 years ago.
Yeah. But I said that we should do this because people want to spend time with you, and so we're finally doing it. It's a podcast centered around you, and we're not sure what it will become yet. And people want to spend time with you, and people want to be encouraged, and those are two things that I think that you could do very effectively through this medium. And do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I'm humbled to think that people might be encouraged by me, what I might have to say, experiences that I've had. However, it's been a goal of my life to encourage people. I'd like to think that my new title in life is the CEO, which doesn't stand for Chief Executive Officer. It's the Chief Encouragement Officer. Bringing some joy and some light to people. That's where I want to be primarily in life now, whether it's my wife, my family, my friends, those that I'm surrounded with, or those that I will encounter. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, and we're planning to do this once a week. This is our first one, mostly trying to get comfortable with the setup and whatever, also figuring out a time, a process, how much preparation is needed for each episode, and kind of what you want to do, what direction you want to go. So people that are listening to this, this will probably be released with a bunch of others. And there will hopefully have guests on the show, and we'll just move through it and figure it out as we go. We don't officially have a name yet. We don't officially have anything figured out. It's more about just starting.
Yeah, it's about doing. Just doing. Not thinking, not overthinking. Because I have been thinking and overthinking this a lot. I'm just really excited to be underway here.
Yeah.
And to be here with you, Benjamin.
Yeah. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. Thanks for the encouragement.
Yeah. Okay, let's start with you. For people that don't know you, who are you?
I'm Rick Bisson. I was born in Woolwich, Maine, where we are right now, 1962. So I'll be 60 in November on the 25th of this year. Grew up here. Have spent my entire life here. I spent 9 months at a school in Pennsylvania, but outside of that, Maine has been where I've been all along, and just grateful to be here. I am the husband to Lori Bisson, father to Lucian, Jamie, you, Benjamin, and Juliet, and grandfather to two wonderful twins, Theodore and Adeline. And I love to be active. outside, enjoying life, time with people. I'd like to be alone at times too, and have my thoughts and collect myself and be grateful for all that's around me. I've had an amazing life living here in Maine growing up. I had tremendous friends. Very, very fortunate to have two very close friends who I grew up here with. We spent every day outside playing, challenging each other, enjoying each other, growing up together on the water here on the Kennebec River where we are. What an amazing playground. And in a neighborhood where the entire neighborhood was our playground. If it was a snowy day and our neighbor had the best hill, we'd go over there and slide on their hill, and nobody objected. They might have, however, we never heard the word. I think they were happy to have us playing around. Went to local schools here, and had a great experience with a small school environment, K through 8, high school, junior high school in our neighboring town or city of Bath, Maine. And again, a relatively small school. Athletics were a big part for me, starting, at an early age, partly because, one of my best friends was one of 6 kids, and 5 of those were his sisters, and they were all older. Well, 4 of them are older, and a fair amount older. And they had boyfriends who were very athletic, were in high school, we were in grade school, and they'd come over to visit with the sisters, perhaps as boyfriends, perhaps as suitors. And, they loved sports, and we loved to play, and they'd have pickup football games in the front yard, baseball, hockey, you name it. We were playing active sports with those older people, and they were the ones that I looked up to, and I would see them and say, wow, I want to be like those guys, because Tom Reed in particular, who I'm talking about, at his house, they had a huge playground set up at their house, and his father, Bud Reed, was a big athlete in high school and college. He was a larger-than-life guy. And Bud would take us to the football games, the Morse High School football games, the high school football games. And, we'd watch the games and be, amazed at these heroes that were out there on the football fields. I mean, it wasn't professional football, but to us it was. And I just remember saying, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I don't come from, my family wasn't athletic, very active, great people, but they were not athletic. So it was stepping out for me to say, yeah, I'm going to do that. Wrestling matches as well. Back to football, though. We'd go to the games, and halftime, there'd be a bunch of Bath kids there, and we would play pickup football games during halftime. And that was my introduction to learning to play sports with people I didn't know, and realizing that I wanted to excel at what I was doing. And it was fun. Mostly it was fun. So I've rambled on a bit there.
No, that was good. No, that's what we want. So going back a little bit, you talked about your friends and sports. What about your family? What, tell us a little bit about how you grew up. Yeah. Number in the family, what that was like.
Yeah. So I'm number 3. No, I'm number 4 in a family of 5. And my dad and mom, so how far back do I go here? Let me just talk a little bit about, I guess, my placement in the family. So there's 5 of us. I have a older sister, Jenny, who is 7 years older than I am, and a younger brother, Joe, who is 7 years younger. Did I say Jenny was younger?
No, you said Jenny's older.
Yeah, Jenny's older, and Joe is the youngest. He's 7 years younger. We have a sister, Carolyn, who is, I think, 2 years younger than Jenny, And then I have a sister, Holly, who's 15 months younger than I am. So
older than
Holly's, yeah, thank you. Holly's older than I am. We were not twins growing up, but we were together partly because of our age, a ton, and have had some great times together. Joe, 7 years younger than I am, shared a bedroom with Joe. That was an interesting experience because he was so much younger than I was. Wasn't long before I was in high school and in sports, and he's still in grade school, and there's a lot of years between us, a lot of differences between us, yet we're close. We're a close family. Years take us apart and years bring us back together. We're all very different, lead different lives, but that's what life is all about. And Dad and Mom, so Mom and Dad both grew up in Bath, went to Morse High School. Dad grew up in a family business. His grandfather and his grandfather's brothers came down from Canada around the turn of the century, 1900-ish time frame. They came down from the Quebec province, a little town called Pont de Lac, and started businesses. My grandfather, well, they didn't start businesses immediately. My grandfather came down and started working for a bakery. He was delivering baked goods for this baker. He didn't speak English, or he didn't speak English well. So I think he smiled a lot and said hello to the best of his ability. He was a very friendly guy, likable guy, and he worked for Joe's Bakery. And my grandfather, whose name is Lucian Bisson, no middle name, just Lucian Bisson, became known as Joe Bisson because he delivered Joe's Bakery goods. So to everybody that you knew, he was Joe Bisson. Very few people actually knew him as Lucian Bisson, meaning the circle of people that he met and knew from the area. His wife also came down from Canada. Her last name was Messier, so a very French couple. They had a number of children, lost a few children to one to polio and Summit before birth. Very resilient, hardworking people. I'll tell you more about my grandfather's experience probably in another discussion because that's a great story. So Dad grew up in this moving business. Sorry, I jumped ahead. So there was my grandfather doing these deliveries, and he was an entrepreneurially spirited man, and eventually started doing some deliveries on his own. He bought a horse named Dan and a jigger, which is an empty cart that was pulled by the horse, and that became his business. He started just hauling things around town. In Bath, the connection between the Kennebec River and the ocean, ferries would come in and bring people from out of town, out of state, for their summer vacations, and he would haul their trunks and treasures, from the ships, the ferries, down to their island or waterfront homes. He hauled anything and everything that would, make money to support his family. On my mom's side, the Bertrand family, my grandfather and grandmother both grew up here as well. Actually, I think my grandfather might have grown up, up north a bit, maybe in Dexter, Maine. And hardworking, my grandfather, I never knew him not to be doing something that would either be fun or making money. And I think making money was fun for him. And when I talk about doing things to make money, he was a lobsterman. He would hunt, and those were his hobbies of sort, but they also created him some income in some ways or others. He worked for the Bath Iron Works he worked on a lathe, as far as I understand it, and I think he worked at the same lathe or pretty much the same spot every day for at least 37 years. and they lived across the street from the Bath Iron Works. He would be up and ready, have his lunch ready, and the whistles would blow, calling people to work, and he would wait for the final whistle because he had 5 minutes to walk across the street and get to work, and it was just that convenient for him. I don't know how much he enjoyed his work. He also was a provider and did what he did and took care of his family. And he had these other things that were really what his passion was. He loved to be on the water. I remember lobstering with him. Maybe another story to tell another time. And he loved to hunt, and he did work for people on the waterfront as added income as well. So that's a little background on where Mom and Dad come from. Dad was married before and had Jenny and Carolyn, so they are technically my half sisters. That's not the way I look at them. They've always been my sisters. And Mom had been married once before, had a child that she lost at an early age, and so it was Mom and Dad with Jenny and Carolyn in the beginning. And then not long after, Holly, me, and then Joe arrived. And we lived, I actually live across the street from where I grew up, in the house that my parents have lived in for over 60 years now. And it was a great environment. I don't remember hard things at home. It might be because I'm slightly unwired for hard memories. So it was a great life.
That's awesome. I can't relate to anything more than Grampy Bertrand only wanting to make money or have fun. I think I'm going to adopt that and just say it's the Grampy Bertrand in me.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yes.
Okay, so you grew up in Days Ferry with Tom and Mike and your family. Tom and Mike were your two best friends growing up.
Tom and Mike were my brothers.
Yeah.
Same age. So Tom is, funny story. Tom was born on October 19th. I was born on November 25th. So Tom's older than I am. And when you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, it's a bummer when your friend turns older than you are. And he can say he's 10 and you're only 9. Well, there was a turn of the tides there at some point in time. And, now Tom turns 60 shortly, a few weeks before I do. And, none of it matters anymore. Mike, on the other hand, July 26, and it's always like, geez, Mike, you're not 50 yet? How long is it going to be before you finally turn 50 like the rest of us?
So he's behind by
he's
by
behind
months.
by months. Yeah. He was young for our class, and Tom and I were on the older spectrum going in. And we were thick as thieves. We did everything together. We became the Triple R trio. It was Reed, Ryan, and Rick. We just had a lot of fun. Every day, off the bus. We would school together. We would get on the bus together. And getting on the bus, it's a 40-minute ride to school in the morning.
What?
Yeah, we had like a 40-minute ride to school. We didn't walk 10 miles in the snow, but it was a long bus ride.
Which the school is about 5 minutes away if you drive straight.
Right,
so that's why I'm surprised.
So we went all around town. That was a great time, though. I mean, the bus time, conversations, engagement with people, just a lot of fun. And we schooled together all day, then home on the bus. And it wasn't like we talked about what we were going to do, but ironically, we'd get home, call each other and say, well, you coming to my house? No, I'm coming to yours. Or one of those. We'd always end up typically at Tom's house because he had the best playground there.
And he's in the middle.
Right. Yeah, but I guess in terms of proximity for people to understand, so Tom's house was, I don't know. It's not a quarter of a mile from the house that I grew up in and where I live now. And Mike's house within a half a mile of my house that I grew up in. So, I mean, just as close could be. So it wasn't like we had to nobody gave us a ride. We'd walk, we'd ride our bikes, ride our skateboards, whatever means it took to get there. And then again, the whole neighborhood was our playground.
Okay, so you're all together until high school.
No, we're not all together. Well, living in the same houses, we're not all together. Tom was a hockey player, and it was interesting because Tom started hockey way before the rest of us got into sports. I can't remember all the different classifications for hockey, but it was like, and because I couldn't keep up with him because it changed every couple of years, a bantam, peewee. I don't remember all the names, but there was this, echelon, or not echelon, but incremental growth in the hockey world that he went through. And I just remember that, Tom would say, yeah, I played hockey this morning. He'd leave the house at like 4 o'clock in the morning with his dad to go to Augusta to be on the ice by 5 for a game or a practice. It was wild. And that also, opened my mind up to there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and there's a lot to be done in the early hours. I'm sorry, where were we going with that one?
So you're all together until high
school.
school.
We're all together until high school. So hockey was a big interest for Tom. He was a really good hockey player. And Morse High School didn't have hockey. And Tom wanted to play hockey in high school. And I think, there was some encouragement from his dad for sure to play. So Tom went to Mount Ararat High School, which is a couple towns over. And, that happened freshman year that he went to Mount Ararat. So at this point in time, we're active in sports, and I say we, the three of us. Mike and I have just started our first real organized sport, which was football at the junior high school in Bath. And Tom is now playing at Mount Ararat and getting started. Well, the first game of the year was against Mount Ararat. And so it's the matchup of, three kids that have grown up together. I actually wrote an article in the paper about it. And it was amazing. The very first play of the game, we kicked off to Mount Ararat. Tom caught the ball. I ran down the field and tackled Tom. And then it went from there. So things changed in high school for us. However, the friendship, has not changed.
That's cool. Okay, so you're at Morse for 4 years. You played football, wrestled. Did you play anything else?
I did track. I can't remember if I did track 1 or 2 years. Regrets, I try to keep them, as little as possible. Try to not be able to count them all on my fingers and toes. Not doing track my senior year. I really wish I had done that. Mike was a really good pole vaulter. His father was actually, I think, or his stepfather was state champion in pole vaulting, and I wish I had done that. I would have done it with Mike, and we would have pushed each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So something we totally skipped over is skiing.
Yeah, skiing.
Because you grew up skiing.
Yeah, I grew up skiing, and Mike's father, I believe Mike's father is the one that got us started going to Sugarloaf. Mike's dad and my dad were friends through a friend, and Mike's dad, Dick Ryan, had a place up to Sugarloaf, and I'll never forget the first trip I made to Sugarloaf. We were driving up. It was Holly. I think it was just Holly, Mom, Dad, and me. And driving up the road, and we're in what's called the S-turns, getting up towards Sugarloaf, where you really start to get elevation. And the snowbanks were tremendous. I mean, of course, I was a little kid, so they seemed big.
They also didn't have salt like they do.
They didn't have
then,
salt,
so.
and they didn't have the plows to plow back the snow. So it was just a winter wonderland. And we went to Dick's Place and stayed with them. Snowmobiles were involved, skiing was involved, and I just caught the skiing bug at a really young age, and that has been a tremendous outlet. I would, during high school, we would, have wrestling matches on Saturdays and hop in the car after that, drive to Sugarloaf, and then ski, at least the next day. So, yeah, skiing has been a big part of my life and certainly our life together.
Yeah. Okay, so high school, you played sports, you skied. You also did some, like, extracurriculars that were not athletic.
Yes, I loved, again, I just had a lot of really good role models. Some were mentors, but mostly role models who I looked up to and said, again, I like what they do, how they are, and how they act, and I want to be like them, so I'm going to do what they do. And I did get into acting. That came into play in high school. And another good friend, Tori Montgomery, his parents she was the theater director, and her father was the backstage director. And they ran our high school production like it was Broadway. Very professional, high demand. I learned a ton about what it takes to be prepared for something other than sports, and that was pretty pivotal to me. And what I learned a lot about in especially the theater was, I'll never forget it. One day, I'm backstage after a rehearsal or I think it was after a rehearsal, and we had to do some painting or something to the set, and I'm washing a brush out in the back room, and the stairs to get out of the theater from the backstage were out there, and Mrs. Montgomery, we called her Mrs. M, looked at me, and I smiled. She said hi. I said hi. She looked back at me. She stopped on the steps, and she said, it's going to take more than just that smile to get you through life. And that was pretty pivotal to me. I heard that and realized, I got to do more than just be a good guy. I got to have something behind all that too.
Someone we haven't talked about yet is Jim Coffin, your wrestling coach, who is another.
Yeah, I've had some amazing coaches, but I've had some amazing coaches, and none of them would touch a candle to Jim Coffin, who, when I look at, the more I learn, the more I appreciate and find so much favor with Jim. What he taught us, a bunch of riffraff high school kids. Here's Jim, who has graduated from Bowdoin College. I didn't know it then so much. Gone into the military, got out, was a wrestler at Bowdoin College. And the things that he taught us about life and how to live life and how to expand your mind, push your limits, grit and growl when you got to grit and growl. And when you're not gritting and growling, you're enjoying yourself, you're taking time, collect yourself. He had posters up in our wrestling room, from Thoreau. I learned words and I learned phrases from him that I still remember today. Knowledge is power. I can't tell you how many times I think about that. Knowledge is power. And one year, he would pick a word, and resolute was one of those words. And he had T-shirts done for us, just said resolute on it. And to this day, that's, I remain resolute in all that happens. And, it's become, I'll say password worthy and something that, resonates with me. And I think it's carried to our family, just that word resolute. And Jim just embodies that whole sense of being resolute. Jim, again, just a Renaissance man. And I'm not sure that's the right category for him because I don't want to couch it any way like that. But I mean, he graduated from Bowdoin College, smart, intellectual man, reader, well-versed. He's a fisherman, lobsterman, and that's how he spends his time and grows being on the water. He's a reader. He's a writer. To this day, he'll write a letter, a 3 or 4 page letter. I'll never forget when I was in college and he sent me a letter. It was so meaningful that this man had taken the time. It probably has given me encouragement to be a writer and to spend time with people in the written word.
It's cool. Yeah, he's a cool guy. He's a nut.
He's a crazy guy. He's just got so much life in him, so much glimmer in his eyes. He said something that I think has really resonated with all of us. Not long ago, I heard it. I've heard it before, but when he said it this time, it really sunk in. Life is a bullet, and that's so true.
Was it life or time?
Time is a bullet.
Time is a bullet.
Thank you. Yeah, time is a bullet. I think about it as life is a bullet.
Yeah, I mean both.
But time is the reference. You're right, Benjamin. And it's a bullet, and you cannot slow the velocity. You cannot control the velocity. You've just got to hop on that bullet and make the most of it.
Yeah. Okay, so you graduate high school. You go to the Hill School you mentioned that earlier.
I went to the Hill School. So stepping back a little bit, high school is a preparation time for college, for what's next, whether it's college or not. And, I knew that, and I was a really good student grade-wise until 8th grade, maybe pretty good in 9th grade. And then I hit high school, and, for a couple of reasons, I think it was algebra. Algebra 1 tripped me up, and I realize this now, I didn't realize it then. It tripped me up, and the mistake I made was not asking questions. I didn't feel comfortable. I felt I had to know everything, and nobody needed to know my weaknesses, so I wouldn't raise my hand and ask questions. And as a result, Algebra 1 did not sink in with me at all, and I struggled and started to struggle in school. And when I say struggle, I mean I got by, I got passing grades. I was no longer, on the high honor list like I would have been before. And I wasn't, satisfied with that. At the same time, I had to deal with it. And there was all this opportunity for extracurricular activities, which I loved. I loved that. And I could be in those. And in my mind, my very naive thinking, I'm doing really well in those. And if I do okay in school, that's good. And it didn't really hit me until too late when I'm applying to schools. And I didn't want to apply. I wasn't going to apply to just anywhere. So I'm going to apply to Bowdoin College. I'm going to apply to Colby College, private schools in Maine. And they're schools that I want to go to because those folks that I watched growing up also went there. So I didn't get accepted, and it wasn't even close. I remember going to an interview at Bowdoin College, and it didn't go poorly. That's when I realized that, okay, all of a sudden I've done a ton of extracurricular activities, and I've done a lot of sports, and I have mediocre grades, and I'm competing with all these other students who have all that extracurricular, and they're the valedictorians of their class. So how do I compete in that environment? So I wasn't going to settle on college. My uncle was a professor at the Hill School down in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. It was an all-boys school at that point in time. And every year he'd tried to encourage me to come to the Hill during high school. And, I always had an interest, dreamed of it. And then as I got involved in activities in high school, close to friends and whatnot, that was not going to happen. And then all of a sudden I'm in this position where I'm not getting into the schools that I want to. So that became an option to do a postgraduate year. He had talked to me about how that would work. So I ended up doing a PG year down in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, and just an amazing experience. Another year to play high school level football and wrestling, and being a year more mature. I had a blast, and brought a lot, I think, to the younger kids. There were probably 10 PGs there that year, and we were a great group and got a ton from that experience. A little exposure to the world down there, a different kind of world.
And it's a boarding school.
Yeah, boarding school.
You're transitioning between high school, being a day student, to...
Yeah, and that was great because it was sort of a college experience for me. It wasn't like I was, living at home, going to a day school again. I was out of our environment here and meeting, kids from all over the world.
And then you reapplied to schools?
Yeah, so that year I'm reapplying to schools. And it wasn't easy. I mean, when I went to the Hill School, I had this experience of not getting accepted. So I'm pretty committed to, turning this around. And to turn that around, I got to really buckle down on my studies. And, I'm in, I can't remember what class. It might have been a pre-calculus class with Mr. Price. And I can remember being in that position. I don't understand. I don't know how this works. And I'd ask questions. And I eventually, got some tutoring and was able to, do well in the class. And I actually took, my uncle was the head of the science department, and he taught physics. And he taught the college physics class. And, I had to be in those college classes. In high school, I had convinced the departments to let me into the college credited English class that I probably wasn't qualified for, but I got in and did okay in. And I did the same thing when I went to the Hill School, although it was more of a test to take his college level physics class. And that was a mistake. I was not prepared for that. He within, to his credit, within a week or two, he came up and he said, "Rick, you're not, this class isn't right for you." And he stepped me back into another class, which was great. It was a perfect adjustment for me to make, and I did well in that class. And I won't say that I was a great student. However, it taught me that I could get good grades. I just needed to buckle down in certain areas. And once again, though, the football and the wrestling experience was really what I learned the most from.
Okay, so you get accepted.
I get accepted to Colby College, and so that was a battle. I think I can't remember where else I applied to, but Colby was where I wanted to go. And here's a really driving force behind the Colby desire. Tom Reed's family was a Colby family. All but one of his sisters at that time were at Colby, had graduated from Colby. The majority of those boyfriends that I was, looking up to when we were playing football on the front yard and hockey on the skating rink that they had, all went to Colby. So that was the place to be. And I hadn't gotten accepted my senior year. Now I'm applying, and I realize I've got work to do to get there. And I'm doing the work in class. I'm also doing the work to get references from people. And so I leaned on some of those Reed boyfriends, to get their help. And I'm pretty sure that was probably a big part of me being able to be accepted there. And I wasn't, it didn't go just exactly as I had wanted or planned, because my application was accepted as a second semester student. So I would start school in January, not in September with everybody else. And that was really hard for me. I was still focused on athletics, and, had a great football experience at the Hill School, and wanted to carry that into Colby. And being accepted as a, second semester, that was gone. And I remember scheduling a meeting with the admissions director at Colby to plead my case, and, telling him that I really wanted to play football probably wasn't the best means of trying to get a decision that wasn't going to change anyways. However, when you turn that around, the best thing that ever could have happened, which was Colby that coming year, the year that I was coming in as a second semester student, opened up a new program where they were going to take up to 30 kids on an exchange program to Cuernavaca, Mexico, for an immersion program. And it was the first semester of freshman year. So I got invited to go. And Professor Holland took us all down. We flew down, got on a bus, spent a few days in Mexico City before we went down to Cuernavaca. And what an amazing ride that was. And that wouldn't have happened, if I was a normal student. So that all worked out well.
So that was first semester freshman year?
First semester freshman year.
You would have been sitting at home, basically.
I would have been sitting at home. Yeah. I don't know what I would have done. I think I thought about taking some classes at the University of Maine. That was one option, but this phone call came from nowhere. And the other beauty of this is another great friend, Karen True, who I grew up with here. Her dad was probably equally involved with our time at Sugarloaf. Dick Ryan and Ed True's wife, Lynn, are brother and sister. So they had been Sugarloafers. So that had a big influence on us going to Sugarloaf. So Karen, a year behind me in school, and Karen had been accepted, early acceptance, to Colby. And Karen elected to join this program as well. So it was great because we knew each other, and our housing down in Mexico, we lived in individual family homes. Our housing was 3 blocks away from one another. So it was just a fantastic experience.
What did you learn while you were down there that you wouldn't have learned had you not go?
Language. I learned that I could, maybe not the best student. However, I could learn the language and I could converse with people, and I learned how to make mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes with language. Can I tell the one?
Sure.
So, the language is a fast learning curve, and I love to, make advancements, make improvements, or just, try things. So we're down there, and my roommate, Dan Bullis, and I are housed in a home with, I think our brother was a year older than us. So just a year older than us. So we're 19 or so, and he's 20, and he lives with his mom in this relatively small house, and they've taken us in. And Pepe, his name was, he had a truck, actually, had a white Ford pickup truck with a 3-speed transmission. And Pepe was a man about town. He knew how to get around, and he knew a lot of girls. And he would take us places with these girls. And when I look back at it, there could have been so many bad experiences, but Pepe didn't cross the line. He knew where you could go and not get in trouble and not have bad things happen. And I'm sure there were some other kids down there that were traveling in the other circle that I'm so grateful we didn't travel in. So Pepe is really great with us. He's taken us places, introducing us to people. And I think a lot of it that he would do is he would encourage us to learn the language. He again, was very friendly with a lot of girls. He'd have girls call and talk to us on the phone. Talk to somebody on the phone in English, and it's difficult to communicate without, seeing the person's expressions and body language. Try to do that in a foreign language that you've only been there for 6 weeks, and now you're trying to talk to somebody on the phone. Those are some pretty good lessons. So, I learned a lot about asking questions and interacting with people in a foreign country and in a foreign language. And one of the things, the funny story that I was going to tell is Pepe had a girlfriend, Alejandra. Alejandra had a sister, Susana. And there was some movement to, have us go out together, the four of us. And so we became friendly, Susana and I, and went on a couple of dates. And one time we're at the movie theater. I think we, what we saw was Mad Max, the first Mad Max movie. And it's all subtitled for them. And I'm listening to it, and understanding everything. They're losing some of the context. So intermission time comes up, back when they used to have intermission. So I looked over to Susana and I said in perfect Spanish in my mind, "Would you like me to go buy you a drink?" Well, that's not what I said. My inference and what I used for words really asked her if she would like to make a baby. Whoops. I wish you could have seen the expression. It was a great event.
That's amazing. That's a classic one. Okay, so you learned how to make mistakes. I feel like from my time abroad that if you and I are similar in learning, that immersive social learning is the best kind of learning for our personality type.
Yeah.
Put me in a classroom and you can I can do it. Mm-hmm. And in high school, before hitting my head a bunch, it was not that hard. But now, good luck.
Yeah.
Juliet, all day.
Yes.
Lucian, all day.
All day.
Yeah. Yumi and Jamie, not so much.
Well, we all learn in different ways.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is learning how we all learn and how to tap into those styles at the right time and in the right way.
Okay, so you leave Mexico and go...
I leave Mexico, go back to the States, and I'm trying to remember how that all worked because, so Colby had a Jan plan where you would spend a week or two after break doing something. And I don't think I did a Jan plan that year. I think we got a reprieve because we'd been away. So I arrive at Colby College after Jan plan. Actually, I think it was 3 weeks. Pretty sure it was 3 weeks long. Arrived back at Colby, and there's really an awful lot like my elementary experience into junior high school. There were 30 kids, I think, in my class in elementary school, and I went to a junior high school where there were probably 150 kids maybe in my class. And so you're a small fish in a big pool, and, who are the sharks and how are the fish, going to relate with one another? When I went to Colby, there's probably 400 kids in our class. We're a group of 30 that were all super tight together in Mexico, and now all of a sudden we're, in a big pond again. And that was an interesting transition. It was really a great beginning, though, because we had each other, and that really helped support us along the way, I think, throughout the time there. And so I arrive at Colby, and now I'm into academics, and there was one of the instructors from Cuernavaca came up to Colby and actually taught a Spanish a Spanish class, which I took, which was a conversational class, which was a lot of fun because we just basically sat around and spoke in Spanish. And some were better than me for sure, but we could carry on conversations. We could talk and we could get our way around. And again, I'm taking classes, and I remember, I think I took a biology class. Oh, that just taxed my brain. And then I take a calculus class, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to succumb to the normal, troubles that I have with classes like this. And I can remember the teacher. She was an older woman, super patient, and I'd ask questions. Maybe not during class, but I'd go up afterwards, and I think I learned then to, especially at Kobe, because I was only at Kobe for 2 years, that I worked too hard. I thought just putting the hours in would get the results, and I needed to do more than just put the hours in. The brain had to be in the right place, in the right space. It was more than just time in. I would sit, I'd study. I had one particular place I go and study, and I'd just be there for hours. And how productive was that time? Maybe not as much. If I had instead broken it up into chunks, I could have gotten more done in a shorter amount of time than just grinding away and losing. Just putting time in, not the most effective way.
My physics professor in college used to say brute strength and ignorance.
Yeah.
We would talk about how some people would solve a problem, that there was multiple ways to do it, and that there was the brute strength and ignorance approach, or you could do it this way. And I think work smarter, not harder is a much more common way of saying it. But
yes.
So you do your first semester, no sports second semester, but
Actually, no. So I'm there second semester, and in the spring, rugby season starts, and I don't know how I kind of picked up. I guess because it's like football, and then there were some kids. One particular kid or student from the Bath area, Brian Preeny, who was on the rugby team, and he encouraged me to try out, and. So I played rugby that season, and then the first season of my sophomore year, a lot of fun, great sport. So I did play that, and then my sophomore year, football, and I have never trained as hard as I did the summer going into. Well, actually, no, I started training when I got to Kobe for next year's football season. I would work out with a bunch of, some of them were football players. Talk about intimidation. Holy cow. I go from being the senior in high school, and accomplished in the sports at that point in time. And then I go to a PG year where I'm older. I've already got, the confidence and the credibility, I guess you might say, to sort of state my claim there, and plus I'm making accomplishments, so I get some respect from people. Then I go to Kobe. I talk about the little fish in the great big ocean. I'm in the weight room, and I'm thinking I'm a healthy, strong individual. I've got good basic skills, can lift some weight, can run, and I am now, I can't imagine what it's like to be in a Division I football team versus, or even more so, when people make it to the professional level. I'm in the weight room, and there are guys that are pushing weights that are just off the charts, and not all of them are the huge guys. Some of them are, they're bigger than I am, because I usually think I'm bigger than I am, and they're off the charts. And their running ability is as well. Although I was not intimidated. Yes, I was intimidated, but I was not going to be out. I was in it to do all that I could, I guess is what I'll say. and I was going to be in that room, and I was going to be doing what I could do or more, and I did a lot. I mean, the gains that I made when I was there because of that influence and exposure were pretty significant, and I got in great shape, and I worked out all summer long in anticipation of football that next fall. And when it finally arrived and we did physical testing, I mean, it was the best I'd ever done. And it was recognized, I think, amongst the coaches. And that all went really great. And then we started practices, and that went great. And then we started contact, and that was an eye-opening experience. I will never forget the first drill that we did. I'm a linebacker. So just so you know, physically, I'm barely 5'8", and on a wet day, I'm 155 pounds. I might have been up to 160 at that time. And I'm a linebacker. And the running back on the other side is Frank Kelly, who's from Connecticut. And Frank he's chiseled. He doesn't look that much bigger than I am. He probably weighed 195. And, it's a drill where the quarterback, it's just the three of us, the quarterback, Frank, and me. And probably it was actually the coach that had the ball. The coach laterals to Frank for him to run outside. He cuts and makes his run towards me, so I've got to follow him and meet him at the scrimmage line, not let him get across the scrimmage line. And I can remember the noise. It was just a whack. I mean, I hit him solidly and took him down. I just remember saying to myself, holy cow. In football, in high school, I'd have had that hit, that kind of contact, maybe once a game, maybe once every other game. And that was the first hit of practice. That was an eye-opener for me. And, after a while, I realized that for many reasons, football wasn't the number one thing that was going to keep me moving. I started to feel some different things that were starting to influence me. And, I can't say I lost the passion for the sport because I still, to this day, loved my time in football. But there was a time for it, and I was moving on from it. And it was a tough season because I actually got to the point where I didn't even want to go. I didn't want to practice anymore. I was just showing up, and I remember having a meeting with the coach, the head coach, and I went in there to tell him that I was going to quit, that I was all done, that I was really struggling with studies, and that's what I used as my reason. He wouldn't let me quit. He was a brand new coach, and he was not going to let me quit. And he actually said it, I think, for pretty selfish reasons. It was his first year coaching, and he couldn't have anybody quit the team. And I don't think it was a super successful place for him to be. We were not a winning team, so I don't think he could have any of his results staggering. So I stayed in, and I finished, and I completed, and I made the best of it, and then I moved on.
I think 20 years ago, I heard that story. I mean, I've heard it a bunch of times, you kind of think like, oh man, like why did you quit? Whatever. And now not just a life stage I'm in, where I totally understand that and like realizing like, oh, this isn't everything. I'm going to focus on what has become everything, but also like, oh, now that we know about football and like how bad it is for your noggin, or snowboarding or whatever, it's like, oh man, I'm really glad you didn't do that. It's like that's a sport that is tough.
Well, and that when I talk about influences that were happening at that point in time, there was a lot happening in my life at that time. Focused on my studies because I was focused on what I was going to do after college, which was going to work with a family business. I'd met your mom, and that was a huge positive distraction, in my life. And, things were just changing for me, and I needed to recognize that. And I'm really glad that I did, because, that also got me started on I'm at Kobe College where I wanted to be, but is this where I need to be? I started to realize that, they've got accounting classes, and I'm in an administrative sciences major. I wasn't in business, administration. I was in administrative sciences. So basically, I'm at a liberal arts school, and my mind at that time, anyways, right, wrong, or indifferent, was wired towards, I got to go run this business. I got to know all that I need to know so that I can help my family take this business to the next level. And I didn't think that was going to happen at Kobe. I wasn't going to get the kind of education that I really needed. I'll never forget one of the professors that was there. I learned that they couldn't they couldn't work outside of teaching. Now, I might have been wrong. I don't know if that's the right information or not, but it just really made me question the relative connection that the professors had to business, and I wanted that immediate results when I came out of college, so that I needed those professors to be telling me exactly what I had to do. So I started looking into my options, and after I guess it was in my sophomore year, I applied and transferred to the University of Southern Maine down in Portland, and started my next college experience there, which was, I'm really grateful that I had both of those experiences, the college life, the dorm life at Kobe, the interconnection of those kids, the friends that I made there, and then the experience that I got at USM afterwards, great as well.
Let's take a break. Okay, we're back. Okay, so you were talking about transferring to USM and having both experiences be great.
Yeah, so I get to USM, and I'm no longer living in a dorm. I actually, two of my friends from high school, well, Karen True's sister, Ellen, they're twins, and another friend, Deirdre Kinney at the time was her last name. How did that work? They were working. They were working, and they had they were looking for an apartment in Portland. And so I said, well, let's find one together. So we ended up being roommates in an apartment, and I was going to class during the day. I was doing a little bit of work with the family business, very little, but some. And, I'm with professors that are active in business. One particular professor was a marketing guy, and we did a ton of hands-on work with him. He was larger than life, and I actually was able to get on a special project with him for some marketing work, and just really learned a ton of great information from him. More than anything else, I learned from him just the doing of it, making sure that you're doing something. And his level of marketing that he was doing was world across the globe, which just opened my mind up to some great things through him. And had some great professors, had a great experience at USM. Didn't have enough credits to graduate, but I did graduate. They allowed me to graduate. I ended up, I think it was 9 or 10 years later, within the time frame that I was allowed, finally took my last 2 classes and got my diploma, which I'm grateful that I did that, and just have learned a bunch about what it takes to be successful. For some people, yes, you need a college diploma. You need a master's degree, a PhD. Others, you need to be a master plumber, a master electrician, be an expert on an excavator. Success comes in so many different ways. It's not just through. Don't think that college is the only path, and don't think that vocational is the only path. The path that's right is the path that's right for you.
Okay, so we have to go back a little bit, because you said that in the first semester of your sophomore year, you were playing football and you had met Mom at that point.
Yeah. Well, actually, I met Mom before that. So I met your mom first time when my sister Holly went away to college. And so let's see, timing of this, when would that have been? I am getting ready to go to the Hill School. Is that right? Holly's a year? No, Holly's 2 years ahead of me. No, so I'm going into my senior year of high school. And I'm ready for football and delivering Holly to college at the University of Maine, Farmington, into Scott North dormitory on the second floor. And I think it was a co-ed floor, if I'm not mistaken. So moving her in, and all of a sudden, there are these other students that are around, and they're, in these other rooms. And in the room beside Holly's room is this very cute little blonde girl whose name is Lori Maxim. And I remember seeing her and being, how do I say it? Impressed, not unimpressed, made an impression, I guess I would say. And that was just a hello, how are you, and introduction. And then Holly's at college, and I hear from Holly once in a while about this girl named Lori. Lori has a boyfriend. Holly had a boyfriend who's now her husband, and they did some things together. They had several friends together, and they were close, for sure, to the point that, once in a while Lori would ask about me, I would ask about Lori, and then it comes time, Holly leaves college and is going to get married and asks Lori to be a bridesmaid in her wedding. So Lori's a bridesmaid in the wedding, and I'm a groomsman in the wedding. And I'm going to skip part of the story for another part. So this wedding preparation is happening. And at the time, when I was in 8th grade, Binky, your grandfather, he had a 1956 Chevrolet and several other old cars, and he would tell great stories about these old cars that he had, and it was really interesting and admiring. I found it admirable that he had a unique car growing up as a kid, and we talk about old cars, and he'd show me old cars, and I was always, wow, that's cool, that's really cool. And he came home one day, and he said, we're sitting at the dining room table, as we would. He's at the head, and I'm sitting beside him, and he said, Rick, you want to buy a car? I'm in 8th grade. I said, what? He said, well, how much money you got in the bank? And I said, I think I've got $500 in the bank, because I would work some during the summers, and I was a decent saver at that time. I think I have $500. Well, and he pulls out this picture, and it's a 1967 Mustang over in Wiscasset that Sunny Soul was selling. And he said, for $350, you can buy this car. I was in. We bought the car, brought it home, and worked on it. Geez, he and I spent a year, I think, overtime in the garage. I don't know how great it was that we tied up a garage bay for all that time. But we did, and we had some great times together rebuilding that car. So I'm, where was that story going with the 1967 Mustang? Okay. So your mother, and there's a bridesmaids party at Grammy and Binky's house, the house that I'm living in, and I have just been out to the garage at the family business, and I have been undercoating the underneath of this car, and I've got green uniform pants and green uniform shirt on, and it's covered in black undercoat. And I'm at the counter grabbing a bite to eat, and these girls are upstairs over the garage in what's now the studio, the art studio. And down comes this blonde woman in a one-piece outfit, your mother, and I'm done. I'm in. And here I am dressed like this mechanic, vagabond. Not that a mechanic is a bad thing, but I'm not looking sharp, in my opinion. And she is looking top notch. And she's got this look in her eye, this twinkle, this sparkle that is just infectious. That's, just connecting with me incredibly. So party continues along. I take a shower, I get dressed, and I'm going out with a bunch of friends. We're in college now, and we got plans for the evening. So Mike Ryan is, going to come down. I'm going to go pick him up, I think. Oh, no, I guess he came down, and we're going to leave from there. So I said, okay, Mike, we'll go, but if I got to go do something for a few minutes now. So I said, come on over with me, because the girls had moved over to the little house on the water, the boathouse, where they were continuing on with their party. So I went over, sat down, and all these girls are there, and Laurie's there with this crowd. And, I sometimes it takes me a while to get to things, to say them, because I'm always looking for the right moment. It wasn't 5 minutes in that conversation because I knew I had something to do and I had to leave. I looked at Laurie and I said, geez, Laurie, great seeing you. I'd love to take you out sometime. When can we do that? It wasn't quite that all direct. I'm sure your mother could correct that story a little bit, but my intent was, okay, I'm very interested in you, and how do we get together again? And her response was, yeah, I'd love to do that sometime. So that was the beginning of our relationship there. And it went from, I guess, to carry that a little bit further for now. So maybe 3 weeks after that is the wedding. And, there's wedding practices, wedding rehearsals, rehearsal dinners. And, during the wedding on that day, we're walking down the aisle together as bridesmaid and bridegroom. And, it's that picture from that wedding, it was like, yeah, that's a good-looking couple. They look happy. And I remember, so your mom is almost 2 years older than I am. And at that time in life, that's, I won't say it's significant. What I would say is it means that there are older guys, her age and older, that would be interested in her. So we're getting ready for the reception, or no, I guess we were getting ready for photos. So I guess it was before we'd walk down the aisle. It was. We were getting ready for photos at Grandma Mickey's house, and the pictures were taken outside in the back lawn. And I'm standing there with all the groomsmen, and these groomsmen that I'm standing with. So Holly's husband is 5 or 6 years older than I am. So these are some of those guys who are on the tail end of those heroes that I had. One of them was actually my football coach, linebacker coach in high school. And there's other guys who are older and, I won't say they're idols of mine. They weren't, but they were guys that I certainly knew. And I knew that they had a way with women. So we're all standing in a circle out here. And I looked at them, and they're eyeing the bridesmaids, and I said something, didn't come out of me very often. I looked at them and I said, hey, listen, the little blonde, she's mine. Stay away. And, they could have blown it off, but they looked at me and they said, okay, Rick. and if they didn't have that reaction, they would have had it one way or the other, because I wasn't going to let it go any other way. So that's how it started.
Okay, so where we left off was you're at USM living with
Deirdre and Ellen.
Yeah. And
dating your mom.
Okay, so you are dating her at this point.
Yeah, dating your mom. So wedding time, created some opportunities for us to be together. And I remember it might have been the night of the wedding. I think it was the night of the wedding that, things are wrapping up, And we're standing at the end of the driveway, my parents' house, and I'm pretty hooked. And I kissed her for the first time. And it's the first time anybody's ever sort of afterwards critiqued my kissing. Your mother said I was a good kisser. Then, how are we going to continue this on? And she had a previous long-term relationship that had ended, not in a favorable way for her. And she was dating, casually with different people. And, I think she was really had been hit hard by the breakup and trying to sort her way, so to speak. And, the more I know about your mom, if I'd known this back then, she really didn't need anybody. And I wanted to continue the relationship. And so I invited her to dinner in Portland. And I remember, so at this point in time in my life, I'm out of college for the summer, and I'm working in a job that I started doing when I was in high school, my cousin, Jim Bisson, had a hot dog stand on Front Street in Bath. And I bought that from him. He had done his time on the corner of Front and Lombard Street, selling hot dogs, and he was ready to sell it. So I bought it from him, and that was my summer job. So it was a great thing for me. I was out in the public, didn't have to work a lot of hours. It allowed me to work out as I wanted to, and it also allowed me the opportunity to work at the family business in the morning before I'd start the hot dog stand. And being in the Bath community, there was a men's shop there. And so I'm going on this date. So I go down to the men's shop. I buy new pants, new shirts, new pants, new shirt, suspenders, socks. I probably bought new shoes too. I was going to look the best that I possibly could. And went on this date with your mom, and we went to a restaurant called Horse Feathers. It's no longer around. And the funny story to that is that, we're sitting down, and I went to her father's house and picked her up. Drove in town, parked. We walk into the restaurant, and we're talking, and the waiter, I think it was a waiter, came over and said, "Would anybody like something to drink?" I said, "Sure, yeah, absolutely." And she looked at me and she said, "Are you going to have something?" And I said, "Yes, yeah, sure, I will." She orders a beer. I order water. She looked at me with these unbelieving eyes and said to me, "You don't drink, do you?" I said, "No, I don't." I'm surprised we made it beyond there. We did. I still don't drink to this day. So that was an interesting time. It was it was pretty telling. It was pretty fun. And the funny story is that we left that restaurant. I walk out onto the street. I trip on the sidewalk, and I'm the one who hasn't had anything to drink and practically fall down in the middle of downtown Portland.
That's funny. So, when is that? That was like your first official date?
That was our first official date, I think. Yes.
How far after the wedding was that?
Weeks. I wasn't going to let much time pass.
All right. And when was the wedding?
The wedding was August.
August. It was August.
Yeah, August. August 1980. When did they get married? Okay, so 82, 83. August 83, I believe. Yeah, August 83.
And you were married in 86.
I married in 86.
It wasn't that long.
Wasn't that long, was it? No, sorry. Dating, yeah. I have to check those facts on that one. Yeah, I can't remember.
Okay, so weeks after the wedding, you go on a date.
Yeah.
And then you date for...
The next date was a James Taylor concert. Went with Tom Reed and I can't remember his girlfriend at that time. But went to a James Taylor concert. And then her mom they lived in Westbrook, and her mom was with a man who had land in Naples, Maine, on Long Lake, part of the Sebago Lakes, and they would go there when Laurie was a kid. They go there every weekend and camp at this spot, and then the mother and Martin, his name was started building a house, and that's where Laurie was living at that time, was with her grandparents who were right in the neighboring house down to where her mom was building. And so I'll never forget, I'm driving in my 1967 Mustang, and I'm driving to Naples, Maine, where I don't think I'd ever been before. And I know it's a drive, but I don't really know the route. And here I am. I'm listening to Van Morrison, got my Ray-Bans on in my maroon 67 Mustang. And I get to a sign, and I think I've got to have already been there, 15 minutes ago. And the sign says Naples, Maine, 17 more miles. And it's the first time I ever said to myself, wow, I hope she's worth it. This is a long drive, and going to be a long, long drive for a long time. So went to the house, again, 37 or 30, something like that years later. Yeah, it was worth the trip.
Yeah. Okay, and then I think before we get to you getting married and then the rest of your life, because that's kind of, it's like you before you meet mom, and then you after she changes your life, like you two change each other's lives and impact each other in that way. Is there anything that we missed that you want to talk about for, like, before you guys started your life together, from your life, or lessons you learned or stories or anything like that?
Boy, that's a big one. Yeah, a ton of things that could be shared. I think what I would leave on that is that it was all good. I wasn't in a place where I had regrets. I wasn't searching for something that I didn't have. I could see what was coming. I'd always had that, in my mind of where my life was going to go. I mean, I was a little kid sitting in the kitchen and family room at the house where I grew up, looking across the street and saying, someday I'm going to live in that house over there, right next to that apple tree. That's going to be the house that I live in. And I do. I live there. And I've just been really fortunate to have this. It's not my ability, but from somewhere, I've had the fortune to be able to see where I'm going and get there. And, it's come that way too, being a father, being a husband and a father, and a friend to people. I see good. I see good in the future, and I see good in people, and just want to bring that to whoever I can.
I think that's a good place to wrap it up, unless you have any other final thoughts for this one.
Nope, that's great.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. Anyone that made it this far.
Could anybody make it this far?
I did. If I can, anyone can. So, thanks for listening. We'll probably pick up next time about when you and mom get together, and then try and tell the second half of your life, because that really, it's more than half, but it's important to tell that, and then we can kind of get into the rest of what this will become. But I'd love to have your story kind of just recorded. And if you think of anything between now and the next one that you wished you talked about, we'll be able to talk about it then.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Any final thoughts?
Love you, Benjamin.
Love you too. All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.